What's up, everybody? It's your girl Barbie J here with the recap and review of Powerbook 3 Raising Kanan, Season 4, Episode 5 The Nail That Sticks Up. I don't get that title, but this was such a good episode. The synopsis read Rock and Marvin navigate a dwindling supply of product while Lou and Imani scout artists together. Joyce's condition worsens. Famous's mother desperately tries to find him. I tell you, this episode was all that and then some. This has to be one of my best favorite ones this season. So before we get started, if you are new here or if you are returning and have not subscribed to this channel, please do so right now. Many of you have been coming back and forth to this channel and have not subscribed. I have no idea why not. But if you can help my channel, I would appreciate just hit that little subscribe button, then hit the notification bell. It'll let you know every time I upload any new content to this channel. Then I ask that you hit that like button, which is the thumbs up button. Write a comment and join the conversation. Let us know what you thought about the episode. And then share because, honey, why? Sharing is caring and you want to help this sister's channel grow. So this episode starts off with Miss Figueroa, which is Jess and Famous mother, Famous aka Sean mother, and she's thinking back to when her children were younger and how she was with her husband and he was very abusive or would be beating and kicking on little Sean and stuff. It was terrible and how they had to fight to get out of the house and leave and end up living in a shelter and stuff. And how she was telling her kids, we have nothing now. And little Sean was like, Ma, you have us and I'll always protect you. I'll always protect you. And she was thinking about that while she's sitting in the precinct waiting for Detective Garcia to talk to him about her missing son. And she said, when he was missing 5 days, you told me to come back in 3 weeks. I come back in 3 weeks, you tell me to come back in 2 months. She said, I'm looking for my son. And he said, well, the way we see it, your son is not missing. He's running. There's a warrant out for his arrest. He's a fugitive. If you want to know where he is, you need to talk to Kanan Stark. And she's like, but that's been his friend since kindergarten. He said, yeah, well, he's into bad things and being friends with him is not a good thing. I was like, this detective was messy. And then he basically walked away and said, I'm sorry. If I hear anything, I'll let you know. But it was so messed up that he used him to try to get information. And now they got a warrant out for his arrest. He ain't even trying to find him, but to arrest him. And he just walks away, leaving her sitting there crying. So now we have this quick scene with Rock and Marvin in her house, and they're discussing the business and how the supply barrels have been empty come in. And she's like, I'm gonna have to talk to Terry and about it. I told him we were like married together, but I guess I'm gonna have that talk again because they can't get their business done with no supply. And then she let him know that Andre Bonds was put down, and he's like, yo, that attorney got us out of a lot of stuff. She said, yeah, he had a lot of connects. So he was like, why the police talking to you? She said, because I had coffee with him the night before, so they just following the timeline. So now we see Kanan in that first apartment, and he's talking with OC, and all of a sudden OC start asking him like some personal questions, like what's he doing with that extra money that he taking out, and maybe Rock will be looking for it because we're cash poor right now and all this stuff. And Kanan told him, don't you worry about it. It ain't none of your business. He said, don't worry about Rock and just do what the F I tell you to do. And I knew something was up, y'all. I could tell by the way he was acting. I said, how is it that Unique allowed him to live when he was killing everybody else? And later on in the episode, you see Unique pull up and OC gets into the car and tells Unique all the information that he's found out about Kanan's business. And then Unique tell him to get the F out of his car. So now we see Laverne, aka Jukebox, in a diner talking with Mara, the new gay friend she has. And she's telling Laverne what happened with her husband. The police think it was a home invasion and that he got shot. And Laverne is like, so nobody saw anything? She said, no, it's a quiet building. Everybody keeps to themselves. But then she asked Laverne, did she have anything to do with this? She said, it happened right after you asked me for his address. And she's like, no, I asked for it in case something happens so I could come and help you or bring help or something. She said, that's the only reason I asked for it. So Jukebox played it off and stuff. But then Mara admitted that she had wished him dead so many times and that these have been the best couple of nights of sleep that she's had in a long time. She said, am I an awful person for that? And Jukebox said, no, you're just somebody who's had enough. And I would have to agree with that. So now we switch over to Imani and Lou. They out checking out different acts here, some rappers here, a white rapping kid over there, some guys rapping in an apartment over there. You know, they all over checking out people. And then out of nowhere, unless there were feelings being felt between them, Imani asked Lou, does he want to come to her apartment and check out her record collection? I said, what? He's like, really? She was like, he said, so it's like that? And she said, yeah, just like that. And they went home and started knocking boots, honey. They was getting it in. And then after all of that, you know, he said, can I see that record collection now? She was like, oh, I just use that to get people here in my bed. I was like, she is a trip. She said, it's been a while for me. He said, it's been a while for me too. And then she told that she knew he used to mess with Jess. He said, if you want to know something about me, ask me. Don't be asking other people because they don't always tell the truth. And it ain't always the truth. So she was like, cool. So next we see a scene with Unique putting more money in a mailbox at his baby's mother's house, okay? And he leaves. And so she finds this money and she gets in a car and drives up to Rock's house. And she waiting for her when Rock gets home. And she's like, this you giving this money because you guilty for what you did to Unique? She said, I told you I didn't do nothing to Unique. She said, and I didn't give you no money. She said, never saw anybody complaining about a wad of money they getting. She was like, well, this is not the first time that it's been there. She said, okay, but maybe there's somebody else who was a friend of Unique who trying to look out for Unique's kid. Maybe that's who it is, but I told you, I ain't do nothing to Unique, and she walked away and left her. So now I enjoyed this father-daughter scene between Jukebox and Marvin, and she's helping him with his cut. Remember, he got cut by that knife, and she's telling him that she learned some first aid skills in basic training. And so they're talking. He said, look, we never talked about what happened. And Juke said, what happened? He said, with your friend's man, what we did, what you did. She said, there's nothing to talk about. And he said, you know, people have nightmares behind things like that. It could get all real uncomfortable and stuff. She said, look, the police think it was a robbery, and my friend's actually happy he's gone. So far as I'm concerned, we did a good thing. And he's like, yo, maybe that army-ish got you comfortable with killing Iggers. And Juke was like, if I'm comfortable with it, it ain't because of the army. I said, ooh, no, she didn't. And she got up and walked away, leaving her father sitting there going, oh, snippity snap. So next we see Kanan showing up to a storage unit with a duffel bag. And he goes and opens up one of the lockers, goes inside, closes the door. There's a trunk sitting in there full of money. Then he opens up the duffel bag and dumps all the money from that into that trunk, closes it back up, locks it, and leaves. So that's where he's been skimming off the top. But I'm not sure if he's stealing from Rock or himself. But that's where he's been putting that money that OC reported to Unique. So now we have Rock and Marvin. They go to that warehouse and they go to see David and Terry. David is there. He looked like he high. He's like, how may I help you? What can I do for you? They said, tell me why our dope is sitting there on your loading dock and not being shipped to those restaurants where they're supposed to be. So he admitted that Terry is afraid since that all that shootout happened. And Marvin had to like smack him up beside the head and put a gun to his throat. And Rock told him, you messing with our business. If you don't have that stuff shipped by today, you and your brother gonna be talking to your dead mother face to effing face. I said, oh, dag. And so he was like, okay, I'll talk to him. But Marvin ended up going to talk to Terry. And Terry was like, he don't care. You could go to the police. I don't care if you tell my wife that I was cheating on her with that younger girl. I don't care. I don't want to have nothing to do with it. He said, and I will go to the police and tell them myself. And he said, you doing the wrong thing. You messing up or something like that. And Terry just got beside himself like, I'm not scared of you, blah, blah, blah. And Marvin was like, pop, pop, pop. He fell and then he did two more, pop, pop, into him. And that was that. So Terry went to visit his mother. You know, he talking to her face to face. David is still alive. So now we see Kanan and Jukebox sitting on the couch at Miss Figueroa's house, Famous's mama's house. And she's asking him, do he know where Famous is? She's asking as a concerned mother, and you his best friend and all this stuff. And Kanan's like, I don't know where he is, just like I told you on the phone. He said, we worry too. And Juke said, yeah, we both are. And so she's sitting there crying. And she said, the police said, and he said, which police? Garcia? She said, yeah. He said, Miss Fig, he's lying to you. He's lying to you. And then his phone rings and he steps out to take the call and he comes back and say, Miss Fig, Juke and I have to go. It's a family emergency. And Juke is looking at him and she said, go ahead. And he sat down and said, if somebody did something to Famous, we going to find out. And then we going to find who did it. And she's like, okay, okay. So they get to their grandmother's house and she's on the floor and they pick her up off the floor and ask him what happened. And Jukebox is calling the ambulance. She said, why are you calling the ambulance? She said, so they could take you to the hospital so we could find out if something wrong with you. You know, Kanan's like, yeah, you could have hurt something inside. She said, who got money for that? I ain't got no money for no ambulance. So she don't want to go, but they call the ambulance, take her to the hospital. I guess they contact all her kids. Lou gets there first. He tells them to take him to the room so he could get credit for coming to visit her. Then when Marvin is there, she's looking at Marvin, telling him he's strong. Don't listen to Raquel. She makes you seem like you're weak, but you're not. You're strong. And she's trying to pump him up because she wants him to help her die. She don't want to go through the pain and suffering no more. So she asks Marvin to help her die. And he's looking at her like, where am I supposed to get the drugs for that? And she was saying, I already got it. You know, all you have to do is do it. And he was like, he wasn't comfortable with that at all. So now we have this scene with Unique going to see the guy that Sal Boselli's wife, Teresa, gave him. And she told Unique to tell him that Sal's wife sent you. Well, anyway, he gets there and his name is Phil. And Phil is saying, out of respect for Teresa, I'm not putting a bullet in your head, but that's as far as I'm willing to extend myself here. And Unique is sitting there saying why he's there. He's lying, telling him that Rock tried to kill him and took his business and put his brother down and murdered his guy Sal. None of that is true. None of that is true. And Phil told him, I never heard anything about that black broad whacking you. He said, what the hell would you know over way out here what happened in Jamaica, Queens? And Phil had to put him in check and told him don't he ever speak to him like that again if he want to leave there alive. But he also told him that Sal didn't even like him. You know, so Unique was trying to humble himself, you know, throughout this whole thing. And he let him know also, why would I take a chance on you, you know, and go up against Stefano? And Unique was like, oh, nobody know this game better than me. He said, but you played the game and you lost. He said, maybe it's time for you to try a new sport. And the guys around him were laughing and stuff, and Unique was getting pissed. And Unique said, all I need is a team around me. And he said, you're right, you do, because all you got right now is a hard on for revenge and an effed up attitude. And he said, neither of which is close enough for me to justify backing you up against Stefano and New York. And he said, unless you could show me that you could build up an organization, maybe then we could talk. But until then, get the F out of here. And boy, Unique was pissed. And he left out of there. And he sat in that car and started banging on the steering wheel. Boom, 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 boom. And he was pissed. Oh, I forgot to tell about that funny scene between Lou and Imani. She's talking about she went to Brown and then she took classes at RISD. And he's looking at her. She said, oh, RISD stands for Rhode Island School of Design. And Lou said, I went to RISD too. Rikers Island School of Drama. I was like, I cracked up. And I believe that's when she invited him out for drinks. And he said, I don't drink. She said, then why don't you come over to my place and I can show you my record collection. And he looked at her and said, wow, you RISD girls don't F around. She said, we really don't. I said, dag fast ass. But that was also when he got that text that he had to go. His mother was in the hospital. He told her he'll have to circle back, which he definitely did. So now we see Rock sitting there talking to Quan, and of course they disagreeing again. She came up short. She paid him at the old price. She's like, why you messing with me and all this stuff? And it got to the point where he was like, I'll just tell Stefano we're not going to do any business together anymore. So Rock got up and left out, and she went to see that other guy out in, where was it, Long Island or something, Westchester? And that guy was like, I told you that I would get in touch with you when I was ready to do business. She said, well, I don't have time to wait right now. You know, I need to know whether you want me or not, else I have to find somebody else. So he told her what she's proposing is compelling, but he needs to meet with her other partners, you know, because everything is about territory and people are big on territory. She said, I'll set up the meeting, but we have to understand this is my deal, you know, because Iggers get crazy. She was sitting there going, because if this is her deal about her being the supplier, why you want to get these other people involved, because then they might try to take over. So that's what she was trying to make the point, I think. But then we see Quan leaving his place, and who comes out of the shadows but Unique. And Quan said, I thought you were dead. And Unique was like, I've been getting that a lot. And Quan just smiles at him, because y'all remember last week he said he had a lot of respect for Unique. So next we see the scene with this young kid going into a grocery store, bodega, and he steals a 40 ounce and he tries to run out, and the store owner is chasing him for blocks. I'm like, you gonna leave your whole store empty and chase this kid with one bottle of beer? Somebody make it make sense, because it made no sense to me. And the kid ran inside this looked like abandoned building, and the man chased him in there, said, I saw you. And when he got there, the kid saw a hand coming from under a mattress, and he lifts it up. And then he puts it down, and the man comes over, and they smell the body, and they're covering their nose. And we all know who it possibly is. But then the scene cuts over to Miss Figueroa, and she's on the bus crying and stuff, and she's thinking back again. She's going back to when Sean got in trouble and she threw him out of the house, but she was happy that he's back home now. And he said, Mom was doing some stupid stuff, I never do it again. And she said, don't think about that now, you're home. And he was like, I love you, Ma. She said, I love you too, as she tussles his hair. It was so sweet, sitting on his bed. And the next thing you know, we see her at the morgue with Detective Garcia. And he's like, are you sure you want to see him? You shouldn't want to see your son this way. She said, I want to see my son. And so they pull out the drawer and lift up that sheet. And she's like, oh my God, oh my God. He must look horrible. She was like, it was so disgusting. Because even the kid that found him in that abandoned building threw up when he saw him and smelled him. So now we see Mrs. Thomas. She's at home in bed with a home attendant, I guess. And then the home attendant leaves out of the room, and Marvin goes into the room, and he's looking at his mother, and he picks up the syringe and that bottle that's right there on the table, and he's thinking about injecting it and putting it in his mother, and he's like, I can't do it. I can't do it. And the mother wakes up, and she tells him to get out of her sight. She can't bear to look at him. She kept saying, Marvin's sorry. Marvin's sorry, like making him seem like he's pathetic because he can't kill his mother. And she had to say it at least 10 times. And he just left out of the room with his head hung low, But I'm like, no, you did the right thing. And so the episode ends with Kanan finding out that his best friend Famous is dead. And he pulls out the cassette that says Famous on it. I guess it has some of his raps. And he's looking at it. He sits down on the couch. He done threw his cell phone. And he's in there holding himself, crying and crying. And, the moderator, Big Kanan, is saying you only get one best friend in your life. And mine is dead. And it hurts and will stay hurting. So don't look for me for no wisdom, because I ain't got ish to say. Just leave me the F alone. And it went off. I was like, dang. And that's why when he gets older, he names his son Sean. In Power, you know that Kanan's son name is Sean. So y'all let me know what y'all thought about this episode. Like I told y'all, it was really good. I really enjoyed it. Put it down in the comment section. And please do not forget to subscribe to this channel. Subscribe, like, comment, and share. I could really use your support. It's your girl, Barbie J, saying see you in the next video. Peace.